the labor force. You're forcing them to sort of get this credential just because everyone else has that credential.
Well, hold
So yeah,
on.
you're giving them
No,
money.
you're forcing them to have the credential because the world is becoming increasingly sophisticated and a high level of specialization is demanded for your labor, right? If we wanted to, we could
I
obliterate
don't think
all
you're
of.
getting that in college. No, I don't think you're. If you think that someone going and getting a sociology, nothing against sociology. I'm not one of those people who thinks like nobody should study anything. But like I taught political science. I mean, the idea that they were getting specialized knowledge from me that was going to help them in the labor market, I think that's clearly not true. They were there to get a credential.
There's one argument that I'm favorable here to as a race realist. There's one argument that I am favorable to that says that college is worthless. It's not that one, though. The only argument that I'm slightly warm to, and I have to do way more reading to have a stronger opinion on it, is the idea that education confers financial advantages because it basically just serves as an IQ filter, meaning that people that are smart enough to get high-paying jobs just end up going to college because they're smart enough to go to college and then pass it and then get a job afterwards. However, the big push against that, as a big free market capitalist guy, is do you do college sports at all or pro sports at all?
You mean follow? Yeah, I've followed. I don't have time these days. But
I think there are big debates over, or there used to be. Man, sports is not my area. The NBA can draft people right out of high school, can't they?
I think they changed that rule. They made it a year. They made you. Have
Okay,
to
maybe
wait
there's a
year.
year.
They did change it at some point.
For the
yeah.
NFL, I'm pretty sure you're specifically not allowed to because the college football they want that college football. They want those people. They don't want you to take them out of high school, right? But they would otherwise if they could, right? Well, what does this tell me? This tells me that it might be that a 19 or 20-year-old could play in the NFL. They might be good enough to do it, but like there are structural things that are preventing them from doing so. If it was the case that college is just a huge fucking waste of time, why would any I think we still live in a capitalist environment. We still live in a competitive environment where all these companies are like, hey, fuck college. We're going right to high school. We're going to recruit these fuckers right out of high school. So we know college is a waste of time. We know it's selling you debt. We're going to get the best and brightest minds at age 18, 19 instead of having them waste 4 years. Why hasn't that happened yet if college is just a waste of time?
It's actually a very good question. There are like these, there are these norms and there are these kind of sort of societal, there is kind of like an equilibrium right now where everyone goes to college. If you don't go to college and you just submit your SAT score to IBM or whatever company is hiring, it does look a little weird. Now, like some people who are a little bit more startup-y in their ethic, like a lot of these Silicon Valley types and a lot of these companies, like Google, I mean, I think they used to just make you solve like puzzles and stuff. So like in coding and like some of the more dynamic aspects of the economy, they do something that's a lot more similar.
Sure. But if I were to go look at Google or anybody that does like the very technical interviews or these people that waste their time, doing leak code shit or whatever, right? If I were to go and look at these hirees, do you think on the aggregate they tend to be more college educated or less college educated than even the ordinary college educated population? Like my guess is there's probably not a whole bunch of college dropout or only high school educated, like high level Amazon or Google programmers. My guess is most of them probably went through school.
Yeah, I mean, it is probably a shortcoming of the market. I mean, there are I wrote an entire book on this civil rights law, which actually complicates this a little bit. If you give IQ tests, that's legally sort of suspect because groups do differently on the IQ test. So they'll come and say, prove that you're not discriminating. Now, college, if you use a bachelor's degree, it's actually the same problem in theory because some groups graduate college at much higher rates. Hispanics actually graduate even less than blacks. So you could go to a disparate impact case there, but the bureaucrats don't do that. They consider it a fine as a credential. While IQ tests do bring problems. So there are like legal barriers in addition to sort of societal norms, but like
I don't think a norm is going to overpower like that much financial incentive, right? Like you're talking about a huge advantage because when people are recruiting out of college, bro, it is criminal. No offense to any of my friends, okay? But it is criminal how much some of these fucking 22-year-old loser fuck people I know that are getting these ridiculous jobs at Amazon, like first year total compensation over $250,000. And I'm like, listen, you're a smart guy, but what the fuck, bro? If you could grab these kids right out of high school instead of having to compete after they graduate from their 4-year university or whatever, I think there would be a massive financial incentive to do so. And I think you see people mining the high schools for like really bright talent immediately. I don't think there'd be any cultural norm that would prevent Amazon or Google or Apple from just like, doing high school senior, career drives or whatever. Yeah.
What's your explanation then?
I think college is probably important. There's probably a bunch of soft skills, and then obviously we both agree on this, right? If you're doing engineering or some like very specific work, you probably absolutely need the hard skills of whatever you're picking up in a college environment. Nobody's learning, like all of the math and everything on their own time, to get into these jobs. So I think college probably is helpful to a large extent because of like the variety of skills that you pick up, and I think there's probably some degree of like college is a decent preparer for the real world, and that it's a good balance of can you manage manage your time? Can you manage assignments? Can you report to a boss? And that like somebody that's graduated from a college environment is probably a little bit better suited for like white collar or middle class work than somebody who's not able to.
Yeah. And so, yeah, it's a question also whether that's a skill that they teach you in college or it's just a signal that you could do that. Because you can grab an 18-year-old with really high IQ. 18-year-olds are often idiots, right? As far as, personal responsibility. If the guy went to college, he graduated in 4 years, he got A's, that's at least something. So, yeah, it's a signal of something. Maybe he didn't learn anything, but he just showed you he was the kind of person who could succeed at the real job.
Sure, but then I mean, at the very least, then if we were to go that road, and again, I'm warmer to this road, we would at least have to be able to suggest something in the alternative rather than just like eliminating college, because now we have no idea how that filter works, because it sure as fuck isn't 6-week coding boot camps, and it's not getting your certs or whatever. Like it doesn't seem like society has figured out so far like a more effective filter. And when I say society, I mean really like worldwide society too, right? We complain about the H-1B stuff, but people aren't going into the slums of New Delhi trying to find like gifted and talented 17-year-old coders, okay, for Slumdog Millionaire. I think they're probably just going to the top universities in India and like picking out the talent there and being like, these are the guys that I want working for me or whatever.
Yeah, so the question of the norm thing is actually interesting. So China, some people might be surprised to learn, actually has a very, very low rate of college graduation. You think of China as a very smart country, a very
No,
economically,
I don't think so.
What? It's not a smart country?
No, I wouldn't think that. I understand why people would think that, because when people think China, they think like Shanghai or something. But like my understanding is the majority of China is probably still like rural-ish people, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
China is, it's still not that rich.
I understand what you're saying, though. A lot of people think that, yeah.
As far as like growth, where it came from, it was below sub-Saharan Africa only 30 or 40 years ago. And then if you look at like stuff like patents per capita, some of the people say China, you don't trust the scientific stuff, but I think most measures will say China is not like a typical country for it. It's definitely more scientifically advanced than Mexico, which is maybe equal in wealth. And China actually, while it's having all this growth, has a pretty low college graduation rate, right?
Sure.
And so somehow it was working. Somehow they were having all this success in science and tech without people going to college. That makes me think it's probably just like norms. I mean, it's just like you have this system where like everyone just does something, and people can be irrational. Maybe you're more, maybe you're I'm a market guy who trusts market forces, but maybe this is one case where maybe you're sort of more confident in those forces than I am.
Hold on. Okay. Number one. Okay. And you're the fucking Trump guy here. Okay. So you should know this. Okay. Number one. Yes, China has been able to make a lot of scientific advancement. A lot of that comes off of just stealing U.S. patents, though. Okay. I would have to do more focused research into this, but like the things that I've heard colloquially, that like if you want to do business in China, for instance, you have to have an office in China, and if you have anything in China, they will steal your shit, and it's going to happen. There's literally fucking
China, any measure. There are measures of like Nature Index, like new scientific papers that gets highly cited across the world, and like you can make like disputes. Oh, China, some of it is like BS. There's a lot of fraudulent research, but there's no measure you could use, anything that's like objective, that will not show you that China is like a technological powerhouse.
No, sure, yeah, I agree. But I'm saying that one, a lot of that is coming from stealing patents from other people. So like U.S. Okay,
they may steal patents, but like as original stuff that they're actually doing. Sure. I mean, I think there's probably no IP law in a lot of third world countries. A lot of third world countries probably would steal your IP if they could and get away with it. I mean, it's they don't.
Yeah, sure. But that's one thing. Number two is China's a lot of people to draw from. Right, so they might be able to afford having what is China's is it like 5 times the U.S.? What is China's population now? They have a
1.2 or
1.4 billion. Yeah, they have a lot of people that they can draw from as well. So even if as a percentage they have less educated people, as an absolute value, they might have a lot more. And scientific progress is, I mean, it doesn't matter if your per capita is higher. Scientific progress is looking just for an absolute amount of research done towards a particular thing, right? And then number 3, when we say culturally, who values education? I mean, in the United States, don't we have for the first time like white people who are like, okay, hold on, guys, I am feeling excluded and racially, fucked over because these Chinese people are actually way overrepresented at our colleges. I need some fucking affirmative action. Fuck these people. They're ruining our shit. I feel like Chinese people value education quite a bit. I feel like it's evident in any like major U.S. university, though.
Right. They value. I mean, like education can be a lot of things, right? Does it have to take the form of going to a college? Like some people like buy their kids all kinds of like they take their kids to math camp and they have their like little toys that they care about education, and some people take their kids to monster truck rallies. I don't think it's necessarily like college when you're 18 to 22 that is the factor. Like I think if you abolish like I don't know, the bottom 50% of college. Like if you undergrad education, like obviously colleges are doing important things in scientific research, even in social sciences are doing at least interesting things. I think like if like the bottom 50% of undergrads were no longer being undergrads, like we just said, if you're not in the top 50% of people who go to college now, you can't go to college. Like would our workforce like become like less competent? Like
I think it would become substantially less productive for sure.
yeah, I don't think so actually.
What I feel, where can I,
Maybe
how
in
would you
the
have,
short run, maybe because there would be some like we talked about this sort of signaling thing, this filtering thing, where like, but they would figure something out. Someone would figure something out where they would be able to test you to see if you're conscientious, or maybe high school would become more important, and like high schools would get more serious or whatever. I think in a few years, people would basically figure it out. There's too much. It's just like 4 years of your life to just know like look to just to know like to turn your assignments in and to show up on time. Like why can't a company pay you below minimum wage like $2 an hour instead of you paying $60 an hour? They could pay you $2 an hour and you could just learn. Like they could just babysit you for 3 years if that's what you need, and then have an evaluation and say, okay, now you're ready for a big boy job. Like why can't that be the system rather than you pay 60,000 a year to a university?
I mean, it might just be that being in an environment with other people that are learning, and I'm sympathetic towards the idea that something should replace education, because there's that quote, like if you pull somebody from the dark ages and throw them into modern society, the only thing they would recognize is the schooling, basically. Like I'm sympathetic towards some type of reevaluation there, but like if there was something huge to be done, did your brain just thumbs up me?
I accidentally.
Okay, sorry. I'm just if there was a way to iterate on this, why I haven't seen anybody do it yet, and I think that's like worth kind of like looking at. Like, okay, well, what are these replacements to education that some other people have figured out? Because I think that's the type of revolution that if somebody figured it out, that would spread like wild. You wouldn't even need a government policy; it would instantaneously take over.
Maybe it's what I just said. Maybe it's the minimum wage law. Maybe it would be worth training these people for $4 an hour. It wouldn't be worth training them for $15 an hour or whatever whatever the federal
$7.25 an hour, isn't that what the federal minimum wage is still?
Yeah, I mean maybe if you're just babysitting, maybe like $1 an hour, it would be like a fair wage, right? So you have like this massive subsidy going to into education, and then you have like the minimum wage, sometimes unions and other things that make it hard to get a job. Sometimes arbitrary credentials, like government will just require certain credentials for things, and so you got these other things that are sort of messing with the system. That's making it harder to arrive at something new. You have all this money pumped into those other things, a few things being done to like stop another system from forming, and you end up with sort of what we have. And the answer to that would be like if you're right, if it's like it can't be right. Like it's not like being a lawyer. 4 years in college, 3 years in law school, 7 years. That's a big chunk of your life. Like some countries, they just do it as like an undergrad degree, right? Like why? Like why are we wasting? Like to take away 3 years of people's lives is a big freaking deal, and like it's ridiculous. Like we don't think more carefully about what we're doing here.
Well, I mean, I think it's ridiculous to assume that nobody's thought about what we're doing here. I think that there are people that, like for instance, if you're in California, I think you just have to do like 120 days of law office shit. I have to go look it up, but you can take the bar there without.
There are some states that have this.
Yeah, but it's not like there's a whole bunch of people that are exploring these options, right? Like if you were to tell me, for instance, it seems a few years ago, I think after COVID, somebody was like, bro, did you know that if you, instead of trying to like sneak into the US and being a legal immigrant, just like go into the US and then find like a border guard and say, hey, I'm claiming asylum. Did you know you can get into the US for free? That's like, wait, really? People figured that out, and now we have like it is the problem with immigration right now is our asylum system, right? Clearly, that is an effective way to gain access to this country and then to be released because there's a backlog of cases here. So that like it makes sense to me. If there's like, oh look, like there was a huge vulnerability here. Yeah, I see that people are exploiting the fuck out of it. But if there was a super easy way to acquire training for on-the-job stuff, how has nobody figured this out yet anywhere around the world? I don't think anybody's figured this out. And do I trust Donald?
Why is it the minimum wage? It's not worth it. It costs too much to train them. They don't want to bother. The subsidies.
I don't even know if I believe that it costs too much to train them. I feel like
because a lot of them are not going to end up working. A lot of them they might trade and they might, and it's like, yeah, I mean, if you train them, how do you know they don't leave, right? You could have a contract that says, you can't have like indentured servitude contracts. I'm sure that like, that wouldn't be enforced by the courts. So there's probably all kinds of things like that make it maybe. Because half of people who start college don't even finish. So if you pay them
sure,
anything,
but now it feels like what we're doing. Now I feel like it's a libertarian argument where it feels like you're just recreating school. Like I could see a company where it's like, okay, well we're hiring people at $2 an hour, so we need like a teaching division for our company, and eventually like there's 5 companies on the same block who are like, okay, well this is done. We all have individual teaching divisions now. We've had to hire teachers for it. What if all of us pool our resources and we make like one other company that trains people to come? And I feel like you're just going to basically recreate college at that point.
Maybe, but it would be like I think it would. I think it would be better. I mean, I think it would be a lot less like women's studies and a lot more practical skills, and maybe that would be what the market would settle on. I'm not against that.
I don't
We
know.
have
For even people that have women's
assistants.
studies degrees are making more money than people who are just high school grads. Number one. Number two, I think it would be a tragedy and a travesty if the U.S.'s educational facilities became solely geared towards employment training. I think that things like the arts, liberal arts especially, you're a poli sci guy. You said in academia, I don't know if that meant PhD or master's or whatever, but these are good things to have in society, right? They're important, right? I think it's good to have
I think
people.
they're important. I think they're important for like people. It's important for these things to exist. I think it's important for like somebody to be thinking seriously about anthropology and philosophy and political science and so forth. Um, how much benefit do we have for like the bottom 50% of students who are just there? I mean, I've taught them at I taught at UCLA for a while. They're just there to, and UCLA is a decent school. I mean, it's not like the bottom 50% of schools or anything. It's somewhat selective. And so like they just don't care. I mean, they're just there. A lot of them are just there to get degrees. You know, one or two or three will be really interested in the ideas, will want to talk about them. They're benefiting. But yeah, I mean, probably some people, you know, I think that learning, I think, has value for its own sake. I believe in culture and social science and all that stuff actually mattering, like not just being a kind of a corporate drone or somebody who's just an engineer and, you know, a technical guy who cares about nothing else. Do we need, you know, 70% of kids going to school and then half of them not finishing? Like, I don't think so.
Sure, but I think that we work that out rather than just get rid of all of schooling and destroy one of the most productive workforces in the entire world by doing a unique thing that no other country has ever embarked on before, and hope that it works out under a guy
Well,
who
we're
clearly
talking,
just like
no,
hates
no,
education.
we're talking about degree. We're not talking about anything radical, right? We're talking about
Well, Donald Trump wants to
college.
eliminate the Department of Education, right? That's a pretty radical step.
Department of Education is like a percentage of education spending. I don't think it's that high. The at least for K through 12.
Well, hold on. Yeah,
If you
I'm sorry. I could be totally making this up. My guess would be over half of, or at least over 30 or 40% of like college spending comes from like loans guaranteed by the Department of
yeah,
Education.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
K
yeah.
through
No,
12,
no,
maybe
that's
not, but Department of Education is like for student loans and stuff for colleges,
yeah.
right?
Well, yeah, if that counts, yeah, from the Department of Education. Yeah, you're right. I guess okay, yeah. Well, first of all, they're not gonna, okay, like when some Democrats say, you know, universal free college, that's not gonna happen either. Cutting Department of Education, especially, and even if they got rid of Department of Education, I think they would still keep the grant. That doesn't necessarily mean that they would get rid of the grants. So we're talking about what we're talking here about policy is sort of calibration. Do we want a government? It's not like we're going to abolish college tomorrow, or we're going to have a system like Germany where everyone goes for free tomorrow. We're going to be a place where we're going to spend a little more on college. We're going to encourage more people to go, or we're going to nudge a few less people to go. I think we're on the side of too much education, too much college. Good reason to vote Republican in the in the grand scheme of things.
How do we? I guess I'm just not. There are like data points that I would look at, like even the bottom fourth of college grads. Like if we go to the BLS website and you look up people who are holding like certain jobs, like even the shit degrees, the basket weaving degrees, these people are on average making more money than people who just have high school. There might be confounding factors that are explaining it, but I don't know. I feel like it's hard to see evidence of we just have way too much college right now. Like our
Yeah,
workforce is so productive. Yeah.
yeah, there are good studies, and I forget, so I'd have to look them up. I don't want to be held to what they say,
Sure.
but they try to get at these confounding variables where they'll look at like going to a good school versus going to a bad school, and there'll be some cutoff. People with like exact same credentials, but one happened to get into like Ivy League school and somebody didn't, or somebody happened to go to college or somebody didn't. I forget what they find. I don't want to say anything like that, but there are like ways to try to get at it. But just comparing, you know, a women's studies major versus someone who did go to, I think there's too much going on there to
Sure, there might be.
determine
Yeah,
anything.
that might be the case. Yeah, huge confounds because the type of person who even get that type of degree is probably in a much better area, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. To return to a point that I brought up earlier, though, the issue that I have even with the conversation we're having right now is I think there's a world where that conversation can happen about what does college and education look like. It's never happening with somebody like Charlie Kirk, who thinks that they're woke universities who are wokeifying the kids and transing the students and everything else, because I don't think this guy has the best interest. One of the issues that I run into a lot with conservatives, it comes up with tariffs, trade policy, with everything else as well, is that they talk about economics, but they're really defending or fighting for some vague notion of culture. And I don't even know what that culture is that they're fighting for. And I'm almost getting it from you, but maybe not. I think you are speaking a bit more on the economic side. But like, if somebody wants to fight about culture, we can do that. But that's a fundamentally separate argument than the economic one. And a lot of the cultural arguments get dressed up economically. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think immigration is, I've been pointing that out recently.
Yeah.
Like there are some economists who are skeptical of maybe low skill immigration. There's no serious economist that I've ever found that is skeptical of high skilled immigration into the
Sure.
United States. Maybe some activists or something, but not like someone who happens to be an economist. Anyone who's any look at this stuff, right or left. I mean, right, there are right wing economists and left wing economists. And so, yeah, they do have to sort of dress that up as a cultural argument. I saw JD Vance had an interview before the election with Ross Douthat, and they asked him like, well, what kind of economic, policies do you care about? He's like, I think that like he basically said too much trade and too much immigration. And I was just thinking like, those are just two things. Like you didn't just arrive at those like analytically. You arrived at those because those are two things that involve foreigners.
Yeah.
Right.
And
You have the
motivate.
two things
Yeah.
that involve foreigners, and there's nothing like in theory that's similar between free trade and immigration. You're just grouping them in your mind because basically there's a cultural concern here. And I think that's right. I think that's right. I'm trying to think like the left. I think that there is like a concern with. Yeah, I mean, I think it is. I think it is worse on the right. I won't make a
Okay.
false equivalent here.
I do agree that like in the left, if instead of Mexico, we had like a Poland to the south of us. There was a whole bunch of like very racist white people. That's not to say that that's all of Poland. That was mean. But like if we had a country like that, the left might feel a little bit differently about immigration from the south. That's possible, sure.
Had a published paper on this where I changed the identity of the migrants. I did a survey. I changed the identity whether they vote Republican or whether they vote Democrat, and whether they were white or whether they were non-white.
Sure.
And even when they were white and voted Republican, Democrats were still more pro-immigration. Like you could shift them, but Democrats were still more pro-immigration, even on the immigrants who are most likely to be Republican, and the whites who you think that they might not be least sympathetic towards. So yeah, I think there's something sort of there's a kind of right-wing chuttery that is just like everything is different. Even if they like me, like I'm gonna be like, this is a based Hispanic guy, like he's awesome because he says MAGA, and then like here's this Hispanic who just like looks exactly like him and his cousin, and I hate that guy just because he like doesn't have citizenship. He crossed over yesterday rather than a couple years ago. There is this kind of just unthinking chuttery. It used to be distributed somewhat evenly between the parties, and now it's on the Republican side, unfortunately.
Yeah, but I think a lot of that has come from the inability to like grapple honestly with the other side's arguments or anything, which I think is, yeah, it's getting annoying. From the like I said this a couple of years ago, and it's unfortunately it is the case now, where I've said that like nothing will ever happen again that's not like a conspiracy. Every single event now, until MAGA is gone or until we have a civil war and half the country is fucking nukes itself or something. I don't know. Like every single world event, every single domestic event that happens is always going to be a conspiracy from now on. If Donald Trump's inauguration is like an hour late, like it's going to be a conspiracy. I've said this, like one of the worst things that could happen to this country is if Donald Trump, right, this fat fucking old dude who lives off McDonald's and doesn't believe in exercise, if this guy were to die of a heart attack, it would be over, bro. MAGA would 1,000,000,000% know that like Hillary Clinton got the death note and wrote his fucking name in and had him die on stage or something. Like it would be the end of the world.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think the conspiracy thing, I think it's always existed. I think that now you have social media, now you have people can build audiences you couldn't get into the New York Times or CBS or whatever. And then the educational polarization where it's all on one side. So it's like there's not like a Republican elite checking this stuff. Like Democrats, after Trump won the election this time, there were like people online who were like, why aren't you demanding a recount? And basically the Democrats, they either ignored them or they shut them down. They didn't play footsie with them.
And
They
how stupid was I that I tweeted out afterwards? Wow, what an unbelievably fucking stupid thing for me to tweet. I was like, well, since Trump won this election, I guess that means that there was no voter fraud, right? And they were like, actually, no. That means there's even stronger evidence that 2020 was voter fraud. I was like, oh my bad, kill me, bro. I guess, yeah.
I love it. Yeah, you guys are too virtuous. I mean, that's what I love to go to conservative audiences and be like, liberals are really, really virtuous. You guys should acknowledge that. They